What is the worst thing you've seen a little child do? Caught a little BD with a pair of scissors about to try to cut my cat's tail off. Future serial killer in the making. Lifetime ban from my house at 5 years old. As it should be. Toss a bucket of frogs onto the hot grills of a fire. He was 9 at the time. What was the bucket of frogs for? Grillin'. We wanted to return them to a swamp nearby. Set it down for a second and next thing we know. Not really evil per se. But I remember this little girl back when I was in elementary school. She was a classmate of my younger sister. About 7 or 8 yo. I was 9 or 10. During recess we quickly learned to never look at her, as she had this habit of charging anyone looking at her and bite them hard. Feral dog having a tantrum hard. I remember her teeth being all black as she would react with extreme violence anytime someone would try to make her brush or clean her up. To this day I can't understand why she was kept in a normal school rather than an institution, as she was clearly insane. My 1-year-old's reaction to the Easter Bunny. We went to get Easter baby pictures of him and an actual bunny. He had never seen a bunny before and didn't really understand the concept of animals. When they brought it out in a basket and handed it to him, he made a face I can only describe as a PTSD flashback to another life in another universe ruled by rabbit overlords. He went to grab it by the neck with his arms all tense and trembling. His jaw was clenched hard. Eyebrows furrowed. Mouth puckered. He reached those little hands around the rabbit's neck. Started to slowly squeeze, and I jumped in like thoughts enough of the Easter Bunny for him. I think. Quote. I still think he was just about to rip that bunny to pieces. I can't remember what it's called. But it's that weird reaction where a person will see something so cute. They want to squish it? Kids don't know yet to not do that. And it sounds like that was his unfortunate baby reaction. Good in you for being like, "Mk. That's a hot no." And intervening. I couldn't let my son be around super cute critters without me holding the animal and holding his hand to pet it until he was about 3 years old. He'd get this wide-eyed, grimaced look on his face and start making grabby hands. And there was no way in hell I was going to hand over a living creature to him when he was like that. Lol. He's now so gentle. We have to remind him that animals don't shatter when you pet them. And he adores our cats. So it all worked out okay. I think cute aggression is the term. You didn't watch the Holy Grail in front of him, did you? During the first week of my current job, my boss brought his kid, approximately 6yo, to the office. She walked into my office and said hi very sweetly, making me think she was a normal, nice kid. She motioned that she had a secret to tell me. So I bent over. She cupped both hands around my ear and screamed as loud as she possibly could. I shouted in pain and stood up, and she kicked me in the nuts, punched my stomach, then ran away giggling. That's when I learned she can never be trusted. I've caught her going through my desk, stealing stuff. I have several office plants and I just know she's going to destroy them someday. She likes to glare at me through my office window like Jack in The Shining, stabbing the glass with a pencil or scissors until I tell her to go away. Once she ate all 15 cookies I brought in for a coworker's birthday, then came to me and asked me to make more for her. When she's in the office, I lock my door and pretend she's not there until she goes away. I feel like you should try and tell your boss, and if it helps, secretly record her when she is in your office doing something bad. Cause a screaming match between his auntie and his mother, and smile as they argue. Intentionally stomped on a butterfly at a butterfly conservatory. Rot in HL. Little St. A family with 2 quite young kids live in my neighborhood. It's a small village with just one small street where barely any cars drive, so the kids often play there. One time, I just happened to look out of the window when they were laughing and playing peacefully outside once again, when suddenly, one of the kids walked a little nearer to the street. where a weird thing was laying, and stepped on it. I could just hear a little stomp and a small, faint cracking sound as the kid lifted their foot. There was a crushed baby bird laying there. I guess it had fallen out of some tree near the road. And the kid just looked at it. There was blood and just that poor little, now crushed baby bird laying on the road. I'm sure it was on purpose, though. The bird was definitely already dead before. He wasn't a little kid, just an AE. But one time in HS, my ex and I were walking around, and we see this baby bird next to a tree. It was clearly a juvenile because of the overall size, but it was also fully feathered and hopping around and seemed perfectly fine. It was just on the ground, so I'm pretty sure it was learning to fly and not hurt. I start saying something to this effect, and how cute it is, and he cut me off mid-sentence, grabs a football-sized rock, yells, "Oh my God, it's dying," and then smashed it with the rock repeatedly. That guy was a real piece of ST. And I could easily go on and on about every shitty thing he did. But I never forgave him for that baby bird. 15+ years on, I'm still bummed out about it. Holy ST. You should have given him the same treatment. Crack a rock over his head and see how he likes it. It was an abusive relationship. And he had me in the palm of his hand. He threw away my clothes that he didn't approve of, and would gaslight me in the process. What do you mean you got a new bag 3 hours ago? And now you can't find it? Weird. You shouldn't be so sloppy with your belongings. One of his coworkers at the time later told me she watched him bring a women's bag in and throw it away at their job. She thought it was a little odd at the time, but figured I'd asked him to junk it for me or something. She said it didn't occur to her until later that it was a malicious act. He policed which friends I could hang out with. My family wasn't allowed to come over. We got a place the same month I graduated. He punched me in the mouth a few hours after my wisdom teeth were removed, breaking all the stitches in the left side of my face. Fun fact: the oral surgeon had to put me all the way under because, and I quote, they were the most horribly impacted teeth he'd ever seen in his whole career up to that point. He broke my hand, so on and so forth. He also, at the start of our relationship, once asked me to puke in a jar, so he could keep it on his bookshelf to remember me by. He died in 2015. Not a single tear was had by me. Sha white cane away from a blind person and ran away with it while their mother laughed and allowed it to happen. The fun was short-lived, however. A large burly man who also saw this happen marched straight up to the kid, unceremoniously snatched cane away from it, and very loudly told the mother what he thought of her. Which wasn't much. Lick scissors. 2-word horror story. Remember that scene in Game of Thrones where Gregor Clegane fights Oberyn Martell and pushes his eyes in to blow his head up? My mother works in a kindergarten where they accept special needs kids too. She told me one day one of the more special kids got another kid on the ground and started pressing his eyes in just like in the show. All the other kids started screaming in terror. Not to mention the poor victim and the attending adult couldn't even get him off, he was gripping his victim so hard. One of the other kids had to run for help and they could finally get him off. Luckily the kid didn't suffer any lasting harm. Maybe this is just me, but if I can't pull the kid off after a couple tries, I'd shove him hard enough to knock him off. I would never hit a child, but in a situation when someone's health is at stake, I'd probably kick the little ST off. One of my cousins tried to throw my mom's dog off a balcony. The only reason he didn't is because his brother screamed at him to out her down and then ran to get my mom. He tried to play it off that he was joking, but there's something off about that kid. I watched a mother walk into a fast food where I was eating lunch. She sat her 2 children, looked to be around 2 and 4 years old, in the booth while she went to the counter to order their food. The little boy picked up the salt shaker that was on the table and began licking the top of it. My neighbor's kid was burning ants to death with a magnifying glass. After a while he decided that ants were too boring, so he tried to hold down his cat burn at the magnifying glass. Let's just say the cat FD the kid up. I'm glad the cat FD them up. When little Timmy took a glass, the magnifying kind, 'twas not the thing that came to pass. He'd hoped. Inside his mind, he'd dreamed of tiny streams of light. A glowing glare. A blur. A flaring flash of burning bright. Upon his kitty's fur. He'd dreamed of smoking feline skin. He'd dreamed of searing paws. And with a tiny evil grin, he'd dreamed of flaming claws. And so he'd dreamed of blazing beams to burn his pet with pride. But Timmy's cat had other dreams, and Timmy FG died. I know you've been doing this a while, but I feel like every time I come across your comments you never fail to top the last one I see. I have 2 aunts on mom's side. Aunt A lost her home in a flood, and they moved into Aunt B's home for about 3 months. Aunt A's family had a teacup poodle. Aunt B's son, APPX 10 years old, spent most of that 3-month period trying to kill their dog with Rube Goldberg machines. At first it was a "that was weird" situation, which quickly became, "this child is psychotic." He started off with making an elaborate bottle rocket cannon, then threw the dog into the pool and threw cinder blocks at it. Tried repeatedly to cram it into cardboard boxes, throwing tools and hardware at it from the 2nd-story balcony. It was scary. I think a few months after Aunt A's family moved out, the kid hit his little brother in the head with a shovel and split his scalp open. They started therapy after that one. Oh my. What happened then? I mean later in his life? He went to therapy for years. He's my cousin, and by our late 20s you could see he was atypical in some respects. Turns out he's a genius. The man has like 5 or 6 degrees from respected universities, all in mathematics and engineering. A lot of my family suspects based on his erratic travel schedule. He was recruited by the CIA for his brainpower. Either brain power or enhanced interrogation techniques. Well, I may have done something terrible as a little kid. There was a class Valentine's Day party with tons of balloons. I wanted to pop a balloon by cutting it with scissors. Because I was dumb. This other kid put his hand up to stop me popping this balloon. To be fair, also probably not a smart move. End result. Kid's finger was hanging by a sliver. Blood everywhere. Turns out, you can have too much red at a Valentine's Day party. I was a K3 teacher. One of my kids was 6 years old. He had learned to manipulate one poor girl into doing his dirty work. He convinced her to punch another girl in the back. The girl broke down and told me how A had told her to do it and other things. I confronted A about it. He shrugged it off like it was funny. He felt no remorse and got angry at L for telling me. Keep in mind L had a bad reputation by the time I arrived. I went to the administration and we found out that all the drama from the year had been orchestrated by this boy. At 6 years old, he knew how to manipulate others into doing his dirty work, all because he thought it was entertaining. My 8-year-old stepson to be made a drink by combining juice with fizzy water. He announced that he had thought of a name for his unique drink by combining the words Jay-Z. This one is actually pretty funny. My neighbor's kid, who was about 10 or 11, used to lure stray dogs up to his porch, then would tie the dog down and stick a firecracker, those little black cats, in the dog's BT and light it on fire. The sheer yelping and screaming from the dog was horrible. Called the police and reported the kid like 1,000 times. All the neighbors hated that boy and jumped on his parents over it. His mom was a meth head, always drugged out, and his dad was a drunk and said, well, at least he isn't a terrorist and blowing up buildings. At least he's not a terrorist is a pretty low bar. I heard a 10-year-old, I think he was 10, I suck with ages, asked if the sound coming from a guy's phone was hentai. He didn't use the word hentai but anime pn. I am a degenerate weeb and even I felt uncomfortable in that moment. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos.